Hi there. Can everyone hear me now?
Yep, we're good to go.
Perfect. The volume shifted after the recording started. That's great. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while. It's been a minute. I apologize for not being there in person. I started going and traffic was too bad. I turned around and then traffic was bad coming back. But I'm glad we're all here in the virtual and real life room together. Well, let's start with the agenda as it's written. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes and remember them from a year ago? And does anyone have any changes or modifications they want to offer? And if not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. And someone seconded, I think. There we go. Thank you, Mark. And all in favor of approving the minutes from January 9th, 2025. Terrific. And that's our first order of business in a good long time. So do we have any old business, Rachel and Angeline, and anyone else there? Because I can't really see.
There's no old business on the schedule. Just thank you for being patient last year. It was a little sad to read the minutes from January and think we were going to be able to have a grant cycle and then have to put that on pause while the county used its time and energy and money on response and recovery. So we're sure glad to be back.
Terrific. And well, I'll speak for myself. I'm glad to be back with you as well, and glad to be in community connection with all of you. So then on to the new business, which is election of officers. This might be the shortest stint ever leading meetings, but okay. 2-minute substitute chair.
Angeline, chair, vice chair, secretary. Those are the 3 seats, and we typically try to do this at the start of the fiscal year. So we're doing it now to carry us through June.
So through June, that's helpful to know.
Would you like to repeat what you said, Kathy?
I'd like to nominate Ray if you're interested, if you'd like more than a 2-minute stint. Or you can think about it.
No, I would be interested, especially with that half-year term. I like that. But if anyone else is interested as well, please put your name forward.
What are the responsibilities?
So the responsibilities of chair are to lead the meeting. If we were fully self-actualized, we would have prepared with the chair ahead of time on getting the agenda ready. And then the vice chair backs that person up in the case that they're not here. And then if we ever need to pull the executive committee together for any reason, it would be chair, vice chair, and secretary. The role of the secretary is to look over the minutes, and from the committee perspective, Angeline takes the notes, makes it a pretty easy role for the secretary. So light lift. Any other nominations for chair? I would be happy to facilitate this so that it doesn't feel awkward. Would you like to make that in the form of a motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor of Ray serving as chair for Strategic Partnership Grant Committee? Done. So, Mr. Chair, please take it from here for vice chair.
Well, thank you so much. That's generous of you all. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll let you know that sometimes my volume seems to go in and out a little bit. So if I seem dumbfounded, I may be dumbfounded, but also I may be missing volume at that moment. So next we need to address vice chair then. And vice chair is pretty important because while serving as vice chair, there were a non-trivial number of meetings where for at least part of it or all of it, I was chairing. Just because of the way all our lives work. So I wonder if anyone wants to put someone else forward or themselves forward for a vice chair nomination.
Everyone's looking at the floor.
I'll be all-time nominator. Ann, would you be interested? Do you have bandwidth?
Yes, I'll do that.
Like y'all are.
I'll run. I'll throw my name in the hat.
I'd like
Great.
to raise motion for vice chair being Ann,
I'll continue to second all motions.
my all-time seconder.
All right,
Congratulations.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? And if just making sure no one else wants to put someone forward. And if not, all in favor. All right, and that motion seems to carry with the bodies I see in the room. If there's a whole bunch of people like behind the camera that I can't see, then we'll need to rethink our structure.
The only
And-
person off camera is Angela, and she probably likes it that way.
That's great. Thank you, Rachel. So for secretary, and Rachel, I think you just described the duties of the secretary as reviewing the minutes. And would you say anything else just to make sure we're all kind of tuned in?
No, that is the role. Per the bylaws, I think it asks the secretary to be responsible for the minutes. As staff, we largely take care of that, but we want to make sure that we're having a review. And it is helpful. There are nuances of conversation or copying and pasting names of people that might not have been there that are helpful to have a second reviewer to catch.
Who was the previous secretary? Oh,
I'm happy to continue being that I can manage the workload.
I'd like to nominate Liz for secretary.
I'll second that motion.
What,
Yes,
we-
surprising turn, yes.
We get to our seconds really fast. Before we do that, though, is there anyone else who wants to put themselves forward or someone else forward? And if not, then we have a motion and a second for Liz as secretary. All in favor? And that motion would seem to carry as well. Terrific. Thank you, Anne and Liz, so much. Now, I think we are going to now receive from staff an overview of the Buncombe County strategic planning. And that's a nice preliminary into the draft changes in the program, which are really interesting. So I'm excited for this. And Rachel and Angeline, please.
A copy of the Buncombe County Strategic Plan for, we call it 2030, was in the mail packet. Angela, would you project it on the screen? And I think I can press a button to make it take up more room. We reviewed the strategic plan when it was getting ready to be finished, right before the storm. It was fully drafted and ready for a board vote. So we revisited the strategic plan in light of Helene. So rather than start from scratch, over the past year, commissioners and staff and community members weighed in on, do these priorities and goals still make sense? Mostly the priorities and goals stayed the same. There were a few additions that are preparedness and recovery related, and then there were some numerical targets that changed, where we maybe were trying to reduce a number, knowing that we have fewer resources to go around. Maybe we soften that number a little bit, and, or soften the goal a little bit, and change the number. So what I'm going to show you and with the packet should feel at least somewhat familiar. And you may have participated in focus groups or surveys during the development. So the way the plan is organized is probably, so it is guided by mission, vision, and values, which did not change. We can stop by those on page 5. Faster than me. These remain the same, mission, vision, and values from our 2025 strategic plan. Envisioning a caring community in harmony with its environment, where residents succeed, thrive, and realize their potential. Promoting through the mission a healthy, safe, well-educated, and thriving community with a sustainable quality of life. And values, respect, integrity, collaboration, honesty, and equity, all still organizational values. What did change was our focus areas, and I think that is what comes up next. We had talked about how there used to be 4 community focus areas, and now there are 6 community focus areas. It used to be education, environment, economy, and well-being. They split a couple of those. So now there's a growth and development focus area, economic development, education, community health and public safety, and energy and environment. So growth and development and economic development were split out from the economy one, and the community health and public safety used to be together, and well-being, and those two have been split into their own focus areas. Where we're heading, which by the way, these are also listed on page 1 of your grant guidelines. When we get there, there's like a table. Where we're heading is looking at the strategic objectives. So for every focus area, there are strategic objectives, 2, looks like 2 each for these focus areas. Because the strategic partnership grants is designed to line up with and advance the strategic plan, we've selected and basically copied that list of strategic objectives and lined it up as the things that members with local nonprofits can develop applications for. So these words are a little hard to read because of the white font. Growth and development is where a lot of the housing work, housing priorities, as well as land use, because as a county government we do zoning and planning and conservation. A lot of that lives there in growth and development. Economic development tends to be around jobs and workforce. Education, still spanning the spectrum of ages, from early care up through workforce participation. Community health, not just physical health, but also mental or behavioral health, as well as social connectedness and well-being. Public safety. That's where the preparedness stuff ended up sitting, and that was definitely beefed up post-Helene. So preparedness is there, disaster mitigation, as well as prevention, crime prevention, harm reduction, diversion services, and then finally energy and the environment. Still prioritizing the conservation of our natural resources, protecting our air and our water and our land. of its shells. So in each focus area, it gets a description, and then past the description, that's where the objective lives. You can see that in the Buncombe County Strategic Plan, it goes down one more level to the goal, and then with every goal, targets. And we used SMART goals, which is an acronym for a type of goal that is measurable and
Sustainable,
who knows what the letters of SMART stand for in terms of.
timely is T,
Yes, what is S?
reasonable, let's see, S is sustainable, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is something reasonable, and then T is timely.
Thank you.
Right.
So they are very specific and numerical. So in this case, we're looking at an affordable housing goal, which is maybe not the best example for this group, because when you remember, if we have a specialized grant program just for something, we're going to exclude it from strategic partnerships. And there is a specialized grant program for housing. But in terms of understanding the structure, you can see how it goes from focus area to objective down to the goal level with a target for each goal. That way we can keep track of our progress. So that box that was in the upper left, objective 1, with the light blue and the dark blue, if you were to go through the plan, each of those is what we're referring to as a strategic objective. The next one that we encounter will also be a growth and development. Let's go to another category, or another focus area. Economic development, great. This would be the kind of one that I could see applications coming in under. Increased opportunities and support for the local workforce. So job training, that kind of project might be submitted as an application. So there is information about kind of why we got here and what we look at as we establish these various goals to advance the objectives. And this was done by teams that have expertise in the various areas, talking with their business partners, staff from the Economic Development Office, et cetera, for this one. This strategic plan was just adopted. It takes effect January 1st. It goes through 5 years and ends on December 31st, 2030. I was going to say I did say it takes effect January 1st, but it's called 25 through 30, so maybe it's already in effect. Nonetheless, new strategic plan for Buncombe County.
Yeah.
If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I don't intend to continue going through the entire plan.
Could you go back to the previous one?
Yeah.
So one question here is, this is specifically around program projects. So do the grants that we fund count as program projects, or how do our grants relate to that goal?
In this one, they wouldn't relate to that goal because the Economic Development Investment Program, I think that's the incentives. Local governments can give incentives to companies to locate there, and the companies promise
Oh, I see,
a
okay.
certain number of jobs. That's why it's not very practical for us to line up to the goals.
Yeah,
Because we tried to come up with goals that were actually is the wrong word, but that are influenceable by Buncombe County's departments.
right.
But in this case, we're taking the plan and saying, what can the community do? So we decided to cut off at the objective level and say, if you can align to the idea of supporting the local workforce, then you're eligible for a grant, rather than say, come down to here and move the needle on a goal. But if they say they can, maybe that would be a way to, at a time where we might try to give them a little bit higher of a score. So to state that in a different way, when we start looking at the grant guidelines on the bottom of page 1 and onto page 2, you'll see left side column, the focus area, right side column, the strategic objective. I guess we could, that might be a suggestion for improvement, put some column headers on there. So their task will be to go through and choose what fits, what best fits, which one they want to apply under. And we had some conversations about, does this leave anything out? Like, were there previous things that were able to be funded that wouldn't fit here? Because in the past, we stopped at the focus area. We just said as long as you align with economy and that mission, you fit. But reading these and talking with the commissioners about it, they felt like it was pretty comprehensive. So this will be the plan that we move forward with, the 2030 strategic plan. And from that, specifically the focus areas and strategic objectives. That's all I've got on strategic plan.
Rachel, that was great. Does anyone have additional questions? I have one, but I want to open it up to the room first. And I have to say, I can't actually see in the room. So if someone, I can see it in a very small form, but
No
if someone has
questions.
one, speak up. Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask one, and it's just out of personal interest, and then it does extend into our granting process. Equity is still listed as one of the values. And I'm wondering, Rachel, how commissioners see equity reflected in as we go across these goals, but also noting, having already looked at the revised grant guidelines, that equity, at least at some point, was the scoring criteria for us, and it no longer is. And also in the current climate and world, why equity remains a value and how it's being expressed. I think that's what my question is. And I know it's a subjective answer.
It is a subjective answer, and I don't know that I can speak on behalf of all of the county, so I'll speak on behalf of Rachel and my perception. Buncombe County still very much values equity in the definition that that was initially created around inclusive and fair and responsive access and opportunities and outcomes for everyone, regardless of their position. And equity a practice takes into consideration that not everyone has the same circumstances because of historical things that might have occurred, like if we're talking about racial equity, or current conditions, like if we're talking about equity around people with disabilities. So for those reasons, it remains an organizational value. However, as you're aware, the change in administration at the federal level has changed the current climate around equity practices in government, and not only at the federal level. There is there have been changes at the state level as well, restricting what local governments can and can't do in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. During our past probably 5 to 10 years, we've been undergoing learning about equity and learning how to build equity practices into everything that we do. We have transitioned our Office of Equity and Inclusion to now be the Office of Access and human affairs, access and human affairs. So I have read through some of the frequently asked questions and talking points there. And what I remember is that our priorities haven't changed. The way that we carry out our work responds to the current environment and still prioritizes equity as an organizational value while following all laws and regulations.
Thank you, Rachel. That was a great answer. I appreciate it. It just seemed due diligence to ask. I'm a little surprised. I didn't know about the change in the office to Office of Access and Human Affairs, that the word access is there, because that is still one of those hot button words, accessibility. But I really appreciate that that storytelling and interpretation, and I value it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions about the county strategic plan overview that Rachel just provided? Hi, Dr. Russell.
Hey, I noticed there's 2 grant opportunities, one that's a 10,000 and one that's 85. And then later in the document, it says that the grants are intended to fully fund the amount requested. I just want to make sure that you know, because in previous years, we sometimes adapted that strategy and gave some applicants less to provide more funding for more applicants. I just want to make sure, are we following this document now moving forward? Is that the plan?
I'm excited to talk about it. And I think once we close the door on the strategic plan, we'll jump into grant guidelines. But you did read correctly. What we're bringing forward is a shift in the grant structure for strategic partnerships that we'd like to try. And one of the benefits of it, if it works, would be not having to struggle in the same way with the partial funding conversations that have been so difficult.
So with that, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Dr. Russell. Does anyone have any other additional comments or questions about the strategic plan overview? And if not, we'll make that pivot now with Dr. Russell's. That's a nice transition. So we can get to that draft plan overview.
Okay, great. So as we thought about what it might look like to bring back community investments after a year off, it presented several opportunities, and I think that strategic partnership grants would be on more solid footing as a result. One factor is that we had a couple of small separate grant programs. One is tipping point grants. One is community recreation grants that were in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. That honestly, candidly, we were concerned about bandwidth to be able to run those grant programs with new priorities. And so we started playing with the idea about what if they were folded into strategic partnerships where we had a smaller and then a larger grant level. Another factor at play is this group has historically struggled, I think it's fair to say struggled, with not knowing our authorities. And looking at Liz, when we reflect about how we'd like to improve the grant process, we have not always been clear what decisions are up to commissioners to make, what decisions are up to staff to make, what decisions are up to the committee to make. And that lack of clarity for me has been really hard. So when we get down to number 11, which actually might be a great place to start, number 11, the pages are not numbered, but it's near the end, what I proposed and brought forward to commissioners and have their support on is that the board stays at that big picture level. They'll adopt the strategic plan and have. They'll appoint members of the Strategic Partnership Grant Committee. We have 7 members seated currently with 2 vacancies that we hope we'll get lots of applications for in December and fill quickly so they can be part of our next grant cycle. Commissioners will adopt the strategic plan, appoint the members of the committee, maintain their resolution that we follow on rules for nonprofit funding, which I'm happy to go into detail with folks at a later date, but that's a lot of the kind of fine print that if you looked up on your page or looked up above where 11 sits and you're like, there's a lot of like legalese and some detail in there. That stuff comes from the county resolution about nonprofit standards, audits and stuff like that. And then they will, commissioners, the last 2 little dashes say to adopt a budget with consideration of the recommended grant awards, therefore approving the grant awards. So what that does is leaves commissioners out of the conversation of, should we put more money in the education focus area than the environment focus area? Or is it okay to cap grants at 80,000 versus 85? That isn't at the level of the elected board. The Strategic Partnership Grants Committee, what we are suggesting for you is to receive these grant guidelines, from us, follow the bylaws that is like the governing document for the committee, use a standardized points-based system to review grants and recommend a portfolio of grants, meet throughout the year to monitor grants and review progress. As you remember, staff writes the contracts and brings the reports in for you. Then we can do site visits. That's a monitoring activity that the committee has done before. And then provide feedback to staff about the grant process. That has also been a historical challenge for us, is when we have a brainstorm, how do we get to like a decision? What this does is leaves the committee in the recommendations place. Here's our feedback on what worked well and didn't on the process. And then staff goes back and takes that into consideration and produces the grant guidelines for the next cycle. So then, under county manager or designee, that's your staff, to do the work of managing the grant life cycle, produce the application and put it out there, support applicants to make their way through it. We host a grant writing workshop, all that good stuff. Set you up for the review, manage the awards and the contracting, monitor the technical aspects of the funding and close projects out. Write these grant guidelines for the cycle, and then carry your recommendations forward to the board. So pausing there after I share that role clarification, how does that sit with y'all?
I think that gives lanes, and lanes are good.
So could you clarify again, who would be establishing how the funds are spread out across the county?
The committee chooses which recipients get it. We didn't recommend in this set of grant guidelines to divvy amounts. We could, if you said next year, like that was tough for us, can we lock in, it's gonna be 20% for all 5 categories. Actually, there's 6, so it's 18. 15, can you lock something in ahead of time? But ultimately, this grant guidelines would be the sort of the rules for the year, and those would come to you from the county manager, the county manager's designees.
No, I'm not trying to get sidetracked. I just know in previous conversations we struggled with how to scoring equate to equity of the version or disbursement of across categories.
Did we also discuss, like, if they're receiving money from the county elsewhere that they would not be eligible for strategic partnerships?
So let's get into that part.
Okay, I didn't know if I dreamed that.
There are a few, that's a really tricky restriction. So as to the divvying between funding categories, we've tried a few mechanisms and none of them were straightforward. So this leaves it up to, this next cycle would leave it up to both the scoring and then what the committee recommends. So I would say if the committee wants to fund some lower scored projects, that you could recommend to do so because of the shortage of other public health projects.
So it leaves the toughest decisions to the committee, basically, in many ways.
I think so. It leaves you out of trying to wrestle with some of the process pieces. So back to the top of the grant guidelines, I just wanted to start there because I thought that would be some helpful framing. Purpose hasn't changed. This supports community-based projects that advance the strategic plan. Funding. We are making a budget request for $1 million for FY27. We last left off at like 900-ish thousand.
Are we absorbing the tipping point, the other two that we're gonna be, if we get their balance too, whatever that was?
Ish. These are all zero balances, unfortunately, because they all got zeroed out
Oh, okay.
for the current
So
year.
just thought the counts. Okay, I see. Okay, I get it. No.
So in spirit,
Yes.
I thought, well, we could come back at a higher level than where we were, because we're being broader.
I do like this split though, because I think of some that were lower. They just wanted a little something and then the big ones. So I really like that.
And one of the nice things about tipping point grants as well as recreation grants was a low barrier to entry, really easy for the applicant to navigate, both on the application side and on the award, like reporting. So we've tried to reflect that here. We're offering 2 grant options. One is up to 10,000 and one is up to 85,000. We thought about flat, just saying 10,000 grants, 80,000, 85,000 grants. I worked the numbers a few different ways, like how many could you end up with to get to 1 million? And it feels like it could be a pretty good balance. But we sort of need to see what applications come in. For option 1, non-personnel, non-operating expenses. So these are for one-time things, like equipment or supplies or technology or training or professional services, but not for like administration or operation. Whereas option 2 would be up to $85,000 for any type of general project or program cost, which could include all the stuff above, as well as also could include any type of operational expenses. Thoughts or comments on that?
I'm sorry, where is that?
Number 3, grant options.
Right, you're next page. So we talked about excluding capital costs. Is that still something?
Yes, I think that we have a funding restrictions section down in number 5. And I like to always remind people, this document is pretty dense. It's designed like a notice of funding. There's a lot of pages and a lot of words. We hold one-on-one consultations with anyone that wants to go through the process. We put this into other formats as we advertise it. We do workshops and try to break it down. So hopefully it's not overwhelming.
I mean, a question that might come up in those workshops would be, I'm a nonprofit, I have a project that I can probably squeeze down and fund at 10 grand, But ideally, I would have 25 grand to do what I really want to do. Is there an advantage for me applying for option 1 versus 2? And what is that advantage?
That's going to have to be a personal choice to kind of weigh those factors. That could be, you could submit a $25,000 project in option 2, because it's an up to.
But is that to my advantage or my better?
Can they submit to both?
Quality of your, no.
Well, will there be sort of an outline or, a dollar or percentage about that then awarded to option 1 versus?
Do you think it would be helpful to offer a possible breakdown?
I don't know what that looks like, but if I'm applying for a grant and I'm sort of at that cusp, and I need 10 or 25, and that puts me in an awkward financial range, and I would be hedging my bets one way or the other.
$1 million could break out as 10 $85,000 awards and 15 $10,000 awards. Because it has an up to, not everything will get awarded at that amount. The majority of the money is going to go to the higher dollar grants, but the competition might be tighter because there are fewer of them.
But so 15 and 10. It's not.
Would it be helpful, do you think, to say we may award roughly 15 of these? We may award roughly 10 of these?
Maybe to the applicant, some people might call it that.
We could put that in the workshop stuff too.
In my opinion, my only hesitation with that is you don't know the amount. So if you get 20 people that are requesting 5,000, so then you really technically could fund all of them for the same amount as 10,000.
I might have shared this with you. The history on tipping point grants is it wasn't always a $5,000 flat award. It was up to 5. And everyone would always ask for the maximum. Sure. But then we had one year where it was like 19 grants at 5,000 flat, and then 1 grant at 4,900 and something. And it like didn't seem right or fair. It was kind of weird. So we just said, oh, it's a $5,000 grant. You propose to us how far you can take this and what you can do with it. That's not the way this is proposed. It's proposed as an up to, but certainly it's tempting to do flat because it makes awards even easier.
I would hate to put a flat on the 80 because that's such a high number. I imagine there's many people like 50 is all I need.
Yeah.
It's
Other conversation about grant options before we continue to number 4, eligibility? Eligibility, still we're requiring, same as before, applicants be nonprofits in active operation for at least 2 years. That puts us in a better place, not working with startups that are still trying to get organized. They need to operate in Buncombe County and serve its residents. We have refined that language to make it so that like an outside group who has a branch here still works. And we have refined our fiscal sponsor structure. We're pretty good at helping groups partner with another group if they don't meet that criteria on our own. And we're suggesting 1 application per organization per cycle, unless there's a fiscal sponsor situation going on, in which case they would be allowed an extra application for themselves as well as the group that they're sponsoring. We are not, Ray, I'm looking at you on this one. We are not suggesting that historical participation in the program be considered for eligibility. You are muted. But
Thank
I
you.
imagine you're
Yes.
saying, that's brilliant.
I actually kind of was. I was saying that makes sense because it's kind of a fresh start. It's a reinvention, so that does make sense to me at this point.
Yeah.
It may not always, but it does now.
So projects, we are looking for them to select one, the best fit. We have tried where they pick as many as they can help on, and that makes it tricky to report. So pick your best fit of the strategic objectives. However, we also want to add this extra layer, as encouraged from county leadership this year, to encourage Tropical Storm Helene recovery projects for this grant cycle and prioritize those.
And that, just this year's grant cycle about the 5 year.
This year for now.
This year.
Let's see for next year.
So in the, under applicant eligibility, where it says they must have been active at least 2 years,
Yes.
if they haven't been, can they then be sponsored by a different organization that has been?
Yep.
Because what I see happening is that since Helene, some new organizations have appeared.
Yep.
Who are doing very good work at serving the community members.
Yeah.
But they weren't there 2 years ago.
We will want them to come in with the fiscal sponsorship of another organization. And I'm happy to talk with groups if they're not sure who they could work with and brainstorm and possibly recommend other referrals for them to talk to if that's hard. A lot of it has to do with the accounting for public funds. A lot of strings come attached to these government dollars, and it's easier if an organization is well established. They've done a few IRS tax filings before they get to this level of funding.
So what if it's a 501c3? They have recently established their nonprofit status, but they're not 2 years old.
They would
They have to
apply.
have a sponsor?
They would apply with a sponsor. And the sponsor would receive the funds on their behalf, pass them to them, but also help monitor. Do you think it should be less than that? Or do you think that is something to be reconsidered?
Well, in light of the fact that new things have sprung up in the aftermath of the storm, I think if they have, even if they're weren't operating 2 years ago, but if they have subsequently gotten their 501c3 status, then I think that should be sufficient. I mean, if they don't have their nonprofit status, then they need a sponsor.
Right. I find that you make a compelling case, and I can think of a couple of organizations that appear to be doing great work that didn't exist pre-Helene.
Yeah.
So I would be willing to, what it means if we take it on is a little bit extra work on the support side. If they're not there yet, I'd be willing to look at taking that on as long as my community investment colleagues also feel okay with that.
Yeah, and I don't want it to come across ever that we're not doubting that they are doing the work and all. It's a lot of times these startups just don't have the infrastructure in place yet to be able to because like, if we give them $10,000, they have to tie those, it has to be restricted funds and they have to be able to account for it. And because they have been boots on the ground for this past year working through Helene, they haven't really got their infrastructure in place for all of that. But yeah, I am definitely willing to go along with you, Rachel, on that ride.
Well, just like several organizations that I know about, the people who have pulled them together are very experienced in their field. It's just that they've formed a new organization now to put their skills to work in response to Helene.
I find it compelling, and I'm willing to strike that fiscal sponsorship requirement and see how it goes.
Yeah, they've got their ducks in a row.
And if they don't, they'll just get to talk to us a lot,
Right,
and we'll help them.
yeah. And they do have their, and some of them have gotten their 501c3.
So are we restricting only to organizations that have their 501c3? That's the
In active operation and compliant with legal requirements for nonprofits.
But if they don't have 501c3, then I could see that they need a sponsoring organization, because you gotta put the money somewhere that's got that
Yep.
standing.
And we'll still keep the fiscal sponsorship option available. Like,
John Over Taylor has got a very strong organization that's been 501c3 for quite some time. Is available for that, to sponsor.
like if there was an organization that was located across the county line. I don't think this is the correct meeting.
Is that the buildings behaviors class?
It is not that class, sorry.
Thank you.
Will you confirm our room reservation? Mark, would you close the room? It is after 2. We got a late start on the meeting, so we will wrap up by 2:30. Maybe his class is at 2:30. And
Yeah, that class is at 2:30.
he's an early bird. Okay. Thank you for that. We'll give it a try. And I am confident we'll figure it out. And if that helps organizations feel more included with the opportunity, and maybe we can help new organizations along their way in developing through the fund. After the chart, I was just mentioning the priority before number 5 at the very, very top of the screen now, recovery projects. And then what we want to do is exclude anything that has another competitive grant program. So Kathy, to your question, if they get other county funding from a department for a purchase of surplus, it's logistically really hard to compare those because they're on different cycles. However, we don't want to fund the same project. So we want to stay out of affordable housing space, stay out of arts, because there's an arts block grant. Conservation easements, because there's a conservation easement fund. Early childhood education, and aging services. I tried to go through and cross off certain objectives, but it wasn't a one-to-one. Funding
Rachel,
restrictions. Yes.
sorry to jump in. I don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, it's hard when you're out of the room. But just to scroll right back up to the Helene part, just to point out to committee members for timeline, because I'm not sure how much time you're going to have to go over scoring criteria, that one of the new scoring criteria is is it a project that meets the needs caused by impacts of Tropical Storm Helene. So it's actually built into the scoring criteria that things are Helene related, have an advantage over things that are not Helene related.
Thank you for speaking, for mentioning that. And I have actually wondered if this placement of this little bullet is as prominent as it could be. I wonder about moving it or reformatting it so it's really obvious, and possibly saying they'll be prioritized in scoring. Thank you for mentioning that, because it is quite a boost. I wasn't convinced at the beginning that it should be a separate scoring criteria, but that's a good way to it's a direct way to give priority. Funding restrictions, bullet 1. What we said is no capital campaigns. If there's like a capital purchase, like a van, it would be okay. We are suggesting that these grants are not designed for partial funding. The projects should be fully funded by the requested amount or demonstrate full funding. The idea is that this grant program would aim to give what the applicant is asking for, unless they've got some kind of unallowable cost in there. We hope that relieves some pain points, alleviates pain points for both the committee and the grant recipients, who are often having to go back and revise project budgets to figure out how to do the same thing with less amount of money. Admin, this has been something that we've not been really directly clear about before, and we want to be here. Administrative costs are allowable. We will talk applicants or grantees through two options for how to do it. They can directly charge their administrative costs, like pay rent with grant money, or they can charge the grant and indirect fee of up to 10% each time they bill, and they can then have that money to pay rent or whatever indirect costs they have, including insurance, because we require insurance for contractors, so we want people to pay for it with the award. We actually give a list of unallowable expenses now. We didn't used to, but that was something we get a lot of questions about. No prizes, no entertainment, no legal fees, no investments, etc. And that's just, those come to us through being a government entity. Application process. This is really familiar to you. We just swapped out the correct website and the correct dates. We're suggesting applications open on January 5th and be due by noon on January 20th. We give them a list of application questions. These are roughly the same. Did we not add a question for tropical storm Helene recovery? We need to make sure we do that, so we have enough information to be able to score it. Consultations, again, committee contact, we ask them not to work directly or reach out directly to you. We give them in number 8 the criteria that the points are based on, and we give them the tool, the actual scoring tool, attachment A. Thanks for bringing this up, Ray. Checking my math. We have 7 criteria times 5 points per criteria, maximum score of 35, all with equal weighting. That means that alignment with Helene recovery will make a substantive difference, with a possibility to earn 5 points versus a project that does not present a tie at all.
Just given the timeline, can you give us some brief update on the outreach and feedback from organizations?
This is our first time talking about it, so it's interesting because by accident, we are not streaming this meeting online. They may publish it later. So we haven't done any communication to applicants or grantees about it. Nor have we reached out to them about the decision on other grant programs. I think the affordable housing one has now been talked about and planned for, and this is the second one being talked about and planned for. So we are going to have to make sure that we message. We've got website updates in queue, a press release, some notification emails, and some direct outreaches to impacted organizations that might have previously been funded by something that doesn't exist anymore. And I would say, on top of that, we'll do our usual type of outreach. We want to, when the announcement opens, we will give it to you so you can forward it, give it to the commissioners so they can send it to their networks, that kind of thing.
Rachel, this is Ray. Oh, sorry. I apologize.
We think that grantees will be excited to hear the strategic partnership grant program is coming back.
I think so too. So I just wanted to point out to the committee, the equity question and scoring criteria is no longer there, but, and somewhat to my surprise, in access to services, we talked earlier about the use of the word access and accessibility, that the higher scores, give attention to diverse populations and community needs, or thorough attention to diverse populations and community needs. And it's an interesting actualization of values while shifting the verbiage.
We remain committed to serving all populations, including populations with barriers to access as well as we can. And it is a weird time where certain words can be distracting, and we don't want to, we want to make sure that we're doing the work and living by our values in the best way possible.
And I'm not arguing against it. It's just we each will then bring our individual interpretation of those definitions to the scoring, which we always do, of course. But it's just written in a little bit different way, of course.
Any other thoughts or comments about the scoring criteria?
It's good to meet.
Thank you all for all your hard work poured into this,
Indeed.
listening to us over the years.
It really has been a cool thing to watch things, aspects evolve, and we know it will never be perfect. It's an imperfect process.
And throw a storm in there.
To try to quantify this, these really important and different from one another projects. But I feel confident that this will kind of put you in a good position. Anne or Amy, were you chiming in?
No.
Okay.
I do want to say that I think, and had even before going this overview, that the changes are really thoughtful and smart. That this has improved the process regardless of the storm and the pause and the consolidation of programs. Like really smart changes that will make us more effective in making our evaluations. The one thing I might suggest is with the two option levels, the up to 10,000 and up to 85,000, as having served on the Tipping Point grant, I found it very valuable that they each were 5,000, because then you're kind of comparing apples to apples. And I wonder if it would be more effective in terms of judging between different things. Up to 85,000 makes total sense to me. But if it was just a 10,000 slot, it was just it's a 10,000, that lets us compare apples to apples more effectively, I think. So just that as a suggestion. Like if we get a $3,000 proposal or six, I think that gets messier.
I'm open to that. I want to run the math a few times. What I think that the unintended consequence could be in any of these scenarios is leaving money on the table. If we have $1 million that commissioners have given us, and the numbers don't work out right, we might only allocate 900,000 something, which I don't love the idea of.
I'm just trying to understand a point here. Are you suggesting doing away with the 10,000 and only having the option up to 80?
Yes.
So,
10,000 to 85,000. Said that for the option one, it would only be for 10,000. In the way that for
Flat.
Tipping Point, it was only for 5,000. That's exactly what I was saying.
Keep option one, but make it a flat 10.
And then the second option would be up
Up
to.
to, that's correct.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I'd say to what your concern, Rachel, which I agree with, assuming we're getting adequate nominations for the up to 85,000, which there's no reason to think we won't. Historically, we have. Then as long as we have, 10 applications for the 10,000, we'll be able to fill out the difference.
Oh,
At least within 9,999 of a million.
Thank you. I will take that under advisement. I like where you're heading with that, and just want to make sure that I have fully thought it through. There is some appeal to those flat awards.
and I'm still concentrating on this, the 85,000 and they're designed for full funding. Does that give us no flexibility in terms of staying? and
Partial
what-
awards. I mean,
It
what
concerns
it says
me.
here is that it's designed for no partial
Okay.
awards.
So we're not limiting. So for example, we could have a high scoring project, but we could say, well, but really we think they're over budgeted in a certain area. Or, I think we still want to retain a little flexibility, but make clear to the applicant that they're not giving themselves an advantage by applying for more than they need. We're not going to apply, because in the past, everybody who's applied before knows we said, okay, we'll fund the high scoring projects at 15% less than what.
Right.
So it is giving a message that we're changing,
Mhm.
but I don't want to be too rigid, because in the end, we could say, in order to fund all of the projects, we may have to take an $85,000 project and make it 80,000.
Yeah.
Because of the way that
To get the
budgets
math to
work
work.
out. Yeah.
I think that the language as it stands allows for a little bit of flex, but expresses the intent that the design is for.
And now, you triggered that when you said leaving money on the table.
Yeah, I mean, that would be weird, right?
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
No.
We don't want to leave money and take it.
And this is Ray, just to say, sorry, I'm not in the room, so it's an awkward dynamic. I apologize for it.
Oh, no,
For me-
it's fine.
For me, if we think something's over budgeted, that's a big strike against it. I mean, we do have the budget scoring criteria, but it makes, I think, doing it in the way that this is leading us to, but not requiring, encourages organizations and rewards organizations for making the most cost-efficient budget possible relative to what they're proposing. So it incentivizes it.
So Ray, the folks that have a 2:30 meeting in this room are assembling and ready to come in. I would say from staff that we are suggesting no meeting for the month of January because it would have fallen on the holiday. Is it on the 1st?
Yes.
And Buncombe County does not do business, regular office business on January 1st. So that would be, we'd be releasing the grant application within a few days, and staff's focus would be promoting the application and meeting with grantees. And then we would see you next in February to begin reminding ourselves how to apply this scoring tool in the software. And then later in the month of February, you would start getting your proposals to review.
Can I make one quick suggestion that maybe we might need to schedule an extra meeting? Because we talked about, in the past, we talked about setting some general guidelines in advance of the scoring process, or at least talking through. And things like, what percent are we going to allocate to 10,000? So if we have an extra meeting, because the timing is so tight, losing that January meeting is really significant. So,
Okay,
yeah.
definitely we'll put that on the meeting, on the schedule for the, agenda for the February meeting.
Yeah.
And look at the possible extra if needed.
Since the timelines are tiny, to plan to do a workshop.
Is it listed in here yet? We've been discussing it, but haven't locked it in. I would like to. But we don't have it set. So that is something we need to make sure we remember to write in here before.
I think it's really beneficial, particularly given the new
Year before last, we did an open house, which was really successful and fun. That's probably a bigger lift than we've got the capacity to do right now, but the workshops can be done virtually and are really helpful.
And will we get some kind of notice when the date is set for that?
Yes. Yeah, we would love to have you attend.
Well, we need to tell, if we're encouraging people to apply, we need to tell them
Yes.
when it is.
We would like you to spread the word about it and also feel welcome to attend.
Rachel, does staff have any other announcements?
No other announcements.
Okay, and I echo what was just said, that when it is posted, if you'd let us all know, then we will promote and share it out.
Yep, and I'll send you an email this afternoon about the committee vacancies, so it's at the top of your inbox and you can forward it around.
Perfect. I see a hand in the room.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a little technical suggestion that in the future, when there are people who are Zoomed and they can't see us because the room is so big, that it might be practical to condense ourselves into a space closer to the front so that the people who are on Zoom can see us.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Do you value the in-person meetings?
Huh?
I was guessing where you were heading, and I was guessing that you were gonna say virtual meeting for everyone, but you
No.
didn't. You said scoot up.
No, I said, so then Ray can't even see us. But if we grouped ourselves closer, then he could see who we are.
Thank you for
And
that
where we raise our hand.
practical suggestion. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we should all just spin out of it.
It's a great
Well,
suggestion. Thank you.
From
I'll
this
also.
great distance, we all wave to you.
It really only is when there's something being shown on the screen, then it gets to be really small, so it's hard to read the room. Right now, it's fine, other than Angelin, and Angelin wants to be in the corner. So, unless anyone has anything else that they'd like to offer, since people are dying to get into that room, can I have a motion for adjournment?
I'd like to motion for adjournment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. All in favor? Good. And we are adjourned. Thank you so much to staff. Truly, I really think that work was exceptional. Very thoughtful.
Thanks, friends. Great to see you and happy holidays.
Good.
To you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
So then I'm off to pay my